The story of IDI Amin Dada is a dark chapter in Uganda's history, a tale of hope turned to terror. Amin was not born into power. He was a soldier, a former heavyweight boxing champion, and a man whose charisma masked his ambition. He joined the British colonial army in 1946, learning to command men and use force, skills that would later define his rule. By 1966, Amin was head of the Ugandan Army and Air Force, appointed by President Milton Obote. He built a loyal base within the military, recruiting heavily from his own Kakwa ethnic group, deepening divisions. Obote, sensing Amin's growing power, began investigating him for corruption. Tensions escalated. Uganda was on the brink of change, and Amin was ready. In January 1971, Obote left for a Commonwealth conference in Singapore. Amin seized the moment. With Obote away, he moved quickly, knowing his own arrest was imminent. It was a race against time. Amin had to act decisively to survive and seize control. The fate of Uganda hung in the balance, about to be decided by its most powerful general. The stage was set for a dramatic takeover. Amin was no longer just a soldier, he was a man with a plan for power. The country stood on the edge of a new era, one that would soon turn dark. Uganda's destiny was about to change forever. The world watched, unaware of the nightmare to come. On January 25, 1971, Uganda awoke to a new reality. Soldiers loyal to IDI Amin had taken control of Kampala overnight, seizing the airport, radio station, and government buildings. The coup was swift and efficient. By morning, Amin's voice declared military rule over the radio. He claimed he was a reluctant leader, acting only to save Uganda from Obote's corruption and tribal favoritism. Amin promised to release political prisoners, end the state of emergency, and return Uganda to civilian rule within 5 years. But behind the promises, he moved quickly to secure power, arresting and eliminating high-ranking officers loyal to Obote. Many were never seen again. The brutality of Amin's rule began immediately. He restructured the military, ensuring only his loyalists held power. With Obote stranded abroad and his supporters purged, Amin's grip was unchallenged. The man who was once a boxer and soldier was now Uganda's head of state. The people, weary of Obote's rule, were ready to believe in Amin's promises, but they had traded one set of problems for a nightmare. The military coup was complete. Amin held the future of millions in his hands. The initial hope would soon give way to fear. Uganda's fate was sealed. The nightmare had only just begun. In the days after the coup, celebrations swept Uganda. Many cheered Obote's fall, hoping for a brighter future. Amin's promises of reform and freedom won him support at home and cautious approval from the West. He released political prisoners and disbanded Obote's feared secret police, boosting his popularity. Amin traveled the country, presenting himself as a unifier and man of the people. For a brief moment, hope flourished, but behind the scenes, Amin was consolidating power, purging the army and planting the seeds of dictatorship. The initial joy faded quickly. The man hailed as a liberator was revealing his true nature. The promises of freedom were a mask. Fear and violence crept in as Amin's grip tightened. The Ugandan people's trust would soon be betrayed. The darkness was closing in. The honeymoon was short-lived. Amin's rule quickly became one of the most brutal in modern history. He established secret police units to terrorize the population, arresting, torturing, and killing anyone suspected of opposition. Amin targeted the Acholi and Lango ethnic groups, believing them loyal to Obote. Thousands of soldiers and civilians were massacred. Intellectuals, judges, religious leaders, and journalists were also hunted. Public executions became common, spreading fear across the nation. Amin saw enemies everywhere. Each coup attempt brought new waves of killings. Bodies filled the Nile, a gruesome warning to all. Between 100,000 and 500,000 Ugandans were killed during his 8-year reign. The rule of law collapsed. Soldiers acted with impunity, stealing, assaulting, and killing at will. Ordinary life became a struggle for survival. The economy crumbled under chaos and violence. The bright future Amin promised had become a nightmare. Uganda, once the Pearl of Africa, was now a land of sorrow and death. Fear ruled every home. The nation's spirit was broken. Amin's terror was absolute. The world began to take notice. In August 1972, Amin made a shocking decree, expelling all Asians from Uganda within 90 days. The Asian community, vital to the economy, was forced to leave with almost nothing. 60,000 people lost their homes, businesses, and savings overnight. Panic and chaos gripped the nation. Families were torn apart, fortunes destroyed. Amin called it an economic war, claiming to return wealth to native Ugandans. He handed seized businesses to loyalists, most with no experience, leading to mismanagement and looting. Factories closed, shops emptied, and the commercial sector collapsed. The expulsion devastated Uganda's economy. Basic goods vanished, and the currency became worthless. A thriving black market emerged, and poverty spread. Amin's decision, driven by racism and a desire to reward cronies, pushed Uganda into economic ruin. The country's tax base disappeared. The suffering was immense and lasting. The expulsion was a catastrophe from which Uganda would struggle to recover. The world watched in disbelief. Amin's economic war was a disaster. Uganda's decline accelerated. The nation was left in poverty and chaos. As Uganda's nightmare deepened, Amin became infamous worldwide. His bizarre, brutal behavior earned him the nickname the Butcher of Africa. He gave himself absurd titles and made outrageous statements, declaring himself King of Scotland and praising Hitler. Amin's antics were both comic and terrifying, masking a regime of cruelty. Rumors of cannibalism and personal atrocities spread, cementing his reputation for brutality. He built a personality cult, controlling the media and silencing dissent. The international community was slow to react, but eventually, Uganda became isolated. The US and Britain cut ties. Amin was shunned globally. Amin used the world stage to broadcast his madness. His people suffered in silence. The world finally saw the true face of unchecked power. Uganda was alone, ruled by a tyrant and performer. By the late 1970s, Uganda was in ruins, economically bankrupt and socially fractured. Amin's army, once his foundation, was restless and unpaid. To distract from crisis, Amin invaded Tanzania's Kagera region in 1978, a fatal mistake. Tanzania's President Nyerere, harboring Ugandan exiles, responded with force. The Tanzanian army, joined by Ugandan exiles, launched a counter-invasion. Amin's demoralized troops quickly collapsed, many deserted or surrendered. Even Libyan reinforcements failed to save him. The invading forces were welcomed as liberators. On April 11, 1979, as Kampala fell, Amin fled by helicopter. 2 days later, the capital was free. Statues of the dictator were toppled. The reign of IDI Amin was over. The man who called himself conqueror was now a fugitive. Uganda celebrated the end of its nightmare. The dictator's era had ended in defeat and disgrace. After fleeing Uganda, Amin found refuge in Libya, then Iraq, and finally Saudi Arabia. The Saudi royal family offered him sanctuary, on the condition he stayed out of politics. Amin lived in luxury, far from the horrors he created. For over 2 decades, he lived quietly, reading the Quran and enjoying comfort. He never showed remorse, insisting he was a good leader and blaming his enemies for his reputation. Meanwhile, Uganda struggled to recover, economically devastated and socially fractured. The end of Amin's rule did not bring immediate peace. Conflict and instability continued. The trauma of his regime haunted the nation. In 2003, Amin died in Jeddah, never facing justice for his crimes. He was buried quietly, far from the country he destroyed. Amin died a free man, escaping accountability. Uganda was left to heal its deep wounds. The scars of his rule would last for generations. IDI Amin's legacy is one of horror and tragedy. He left Uganda broken, its economy shattered, its people traumatized. The expulsion of Asians and the murder or exile of educated Ugandans destroyed the nation's future. The moral fabric of society was torn apart by years of violence and fear. The trauma of his regime lingers, passed down through generations. Amin's story is a warning to the world of the dangers of unchecked power and military dictatorship. It shows how a charismatic leader can lead a nation into darkness. The suffering he caused must never be forgotten. By remembering the victims and studying Amin's rise and fall, we learn to recognize the warning signs. The lesson is clear: democracy, human rights, and accountability are vital. Uganda's pain is a reminder to the world: never again should such a tragedy be allowed to happen.